You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers about hikers for everybody.
This is the Hammock Hangers Podcast, where we hang out and talk about everything from hammocks and hammock camping to the group hangs from around the country. What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the Hammock Hangers Podcast. And as usual, I am your host, Paul Collins, or Skunkape. This week, our guest is Jan Walker. Jan and I talk about a little more than just hammocks, which makes this episode just a little bit longer than the previous weeks, but I think y'all will really enjoy it. Jan tells us about an epic journey that she did back in 2016, which is when she discovered hammocks. You will hear how she ended up choosing the Clark Mark II hammock and why it was the perfect hammock for her to use on her trip. Now let's get on to the show and hear more from Jan. All right, you guys, I'm here with our guest this week, Jan Walker. Jan sent me an email a little while back letting me know how she got into hammock camping. And what she told me was pretty interesting. So let's hear from Jan and get the full story. So welcome to the podcast, Jan.
Hey, everybody.
All right, so when you sent me the email, Jan, you had told me, what you were planning when you discovered hammocks and everything else. Tell the listeners, what you were getting ready to do.
I was getting ready to walk across the country from California to Maryland. And I had actually gotten into a little bit of hammocking before then, thank goodness. So I know how to string the things up and get the proper things to do that with. But this particular adventure posed a bit of a problem because out west, there's not that many trees. So I needed something that was a little bit more hybrid. And so I did a lot of research. And there were several manufacturers out there, but what I came up with was the Clark Mark II, I believe it is. I believe it's the Mark II.
Yeah.
And it is billed as a hybrid. You can go to ground or you can go in the air. The reason being is the bottom part of the hammock is a material that doesn't soak through. So it's like having your own installed ground cloth. And so when you take it to ground, you don't have to have anything to put underneath it.
Okay.
I know after Dutchware took over, they don't make the Mark II anymore. But just looking at the construction of all the other hammocks, those are very easy. Could very easily be taken to ground if you needed to and didn't have any trees. You would just put a ground sheet underneath. It would be very easy, 2 stakes or even 1 stake if you only got 1 tree to attach it onto. So they were very versatile, and I needed someplace if I didn't have any trees to be able to sleep. So.
Gotcha. Okay. So what was your purpose for doing that walk across America?
It was more of a personal goal, but I also did it for the 9/11 National Memorial Trail Alliance is the full name of it. And what they are is a group. It's kind of a consortium of people who are in charge of a lot of different rail trails and greenways and this kind of stuff that connect all 3 of the 9/11 crash sites together. And what they're working toward is a continual trail that you can walk, bike, hike, even drive eventually that connects all 3. And it will be has to be designated by Congress. And I believe they've already gotten that through. Although the trail is not completely finished. There's still some of it on road, but it's a mishmash of existing stuff. Then they're trying to connect all the dots in the end and make it all connect up.
So are they trying to make it to where it's basically a trail through the woods, like most of your other long trails, or is a lot of it going to be road walk or what?
The ultimate goal is to have it all off the road.
Okay.
So right now, I'm told there's about 70% of it off road. Although
that's awesome.
Last fall, some friends of mine and I tried to do the section between New York down to Shanksville and down to DC. And there was a lot more road than we thought there would be. Plus some of the trails, we just happened to come through when whatever that hurricane came through last year. And it actually washed some trails out that we couldn't use. But the trails that are there that they are using are rail trails, greenways, all that kind of stuff. So,
okay.
You were in the woods, especially in Pennsylvania for sure.
Gotcha.
A lot in the woods, and they're very pretty. They just need to connect them all up eventually.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that stuff takes time. So what made you decide to take on that journey?
The crossing, it was just one of those stars align kind of things.
Okay.
That seemed to be like that was going to be my year. I had saved
Gotcha.
up money for several years because this is not a cheap endeavor. I mean, even if you go and never stay in a hotel at all, it still costs a bit of money. So I had been saving up for a while. I had just, ironically, the previous year had the first race that I did not finish. I had never not finished a race before, ultra distance race or anything else. And prior to that, I had broken my shoulder 6 months out from a major multi-day trail race. And this was running. And okay. I broke my shoulder in 5 places. And I was completely out of my training for at least 8 weeks and basically back to square one on a race that you have to be really in top-notch shape for. And it was too late to get the money back on it. So I didn't want to just lose the money. I thought, well, I'll go out and do best I could. And I timed out. There were time limits on it each day. And I was doing fine, but I was just too slow. So they pulled me from the race. And so I'd had the first one that I'd ever been pulled from. I'd never been pulled or anything. Sometimes I'd come in, from races and there'd not be a finish line there, but I'd always finish. And that was kind of a low point. And I don't know, I just sat around stewed about it for a while. And then, this had been kind of ruminating in the back of my mind. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be my year. This is everything family-wise, everything else money-wise, that kind of stuff. I am retired, but I do work doing this and that and the other. And I have been working in a guitar shop there in the town I was living in. And I was able to take off any time I really wanted to. And I just walked in one day and say, hey, I'm going to walk across the country. I'll see you in a year. So
this was back in 2016.
16 was 16 was the walk. I started on March 1st at Oceanside, California, and walked 7 months later. Stepped into the Atlantic in Ocean City, Maryland.
Wow!
So
that's awesome.
It took me a little longer than I planned, but I got there, and it was definitely an adventure. That's for sure.
I bet. So, you do a lot of ultra distance running and stuff like that, correct?
Yes. Okay. I don't do as much now. I do more bike packing on my mountain bike now. I have a few little gifts from my cross country trek, and one of them is my left ankle is not badly damaged, but it doesn't take a lot of mileage for it to start barking at me. Gotcha. So after I've only done two ultras since I've gotten back running, or mostly walking, but the last one I did pretty much showed me that ankle, for ultras is not very good. So I'm not on foot. So
Okay.
I've gotten in more into mountain biking and multi-day backpacking now, and I really enjoy that. Whenever I can get away, I try to get on the trails, and my friends and I have done several multi days. The one we did last year, the 9/11 trail, was 21 days.
Oh wow!
So, but mostly they're a week, 10 days, something like that, and we pack all our stuff on our bikes, and we just head that way.
I think bike packing's becoming pretty popular now as well.
Well, there's a lot of my friends who are bike packers that they do hammocks. Because there are a lot. Once you get your kit dialed in the way you really like it, they're a lot lighter than tents.
Right.
They can be, again, if you're familiar with all getting the setups and stuff, they can be very easy and quick to deploy.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people I know that backpack or bike pack use hammocks now, for sure. And then backpackers too. It's just I don't have as many friends in that circle much with backpacking because again, my ankle is an issue. But they're just so much lighter and easier to take care of. Once you learn what you're supposed to learn about them.
Right.
Because the first time I used one, I did everything wrong. And this was
we always do.
This was like a year. This was a year or so maybe before I started on my cross country thing. I mean, I did everything wrong, and so I just kind of tried to pay attention on what people were trying to teach and stuff like that, and finally got it all dialed in. And now, even though I use my Mark II still, the one drawback that I would say about that one is it's hard to fit an underquilt on it. They make underquilts for Clarks, but they don't. They're just. I think it's the geometry of the bottom part, and the ones that they do make specifically for them, they're a little heavy. I think one of the third-party vendors makes one. I can't remember. I don't want to name one because I don't want to misspeak. But I believe somebody makes one for it that's a regular down
Loco
one.
Libre. Loco Libre. Yep.
That's a regular down one. The one that Clark made before they sold to Dutchware, I don't believe it was a down one. And I think he still makes it. I think he still makes it for the NXs and all the other ones that they make, but it just, I have put underquilts under it and made it work,
right?
But it's not optimal. So I've actually gone to a Superior Gear, where he's got the underquilt already there. Right. Everything is there.
It's already attached.
And I've got a Franke bug net.
Yep.
I keep it all rolled up. Everything's all rolled up in one ball, and I just deploy it out that way. And then Z-Packs, when I went on my trip, I contacted several companies and either asked them if they would give me something free, or if not, to give me a discount on something.
Right.
And even though the Mark II has a very good tarp kind of a thing that it actually attaches to it. And by the way, I have slept in that thing when it is like hurricane storms.
The Clarks are bomb proof.
Not a drop. I never got wet. But I also I asked Z-Packs if I could ended up a discount on one of their Cuban fiber tarps.
Okay.
And it balls down to like this big. I don't think it's maybe size of a softball, and doesn't weigh. I mean, it's nothing. And I still have that. Yep. And so I use that for my on my Superior Gear now as a
Okay.
tarp over the top. I have used it in my Mark II just to be redundant sometimes, but I've slept my Mark II with nothing except what came with it. And I have been in gale force, hurricane, that's a little hyperbole, but anyway, big thunderstorms and stuff, and never got one drop. It always stayed dry, underneath, on top, everywhere.
Yep.
So really nicely made piece of gear. And I'm sure Dutch, he's taken the specs and he does the same quality as Clark did before on the ones that they've chosen to continue to manufacture. Right. So,
yeah, I've got a couple of the NX270s myself. So I mean, I know the quality of the Clarks, and I mean, like I said, they're pretty much bomb proof. So did you, when you were doing the walk across, did you ever have any issues with places that you would set up camp?
No. I get a lot of questions about that, especially because I'm a female, and I went by myself. I didn't go with anyone. I was by myself.
Okay.
Most of the way. If I couldn't find trees, I would try to find. I mean, I pulled a cart, and there were sometimes I couldn't find a good place to. I couldn't find a tree and I couldn't find a good place to stake in, but I could find one end. So I might tie off to the bottom of a tree and then tie the other end to my cart. Okay. And with those Clarks, all you have to do is make sure it's stretched out.
Yep.
So it stays taut and the hoops stay off your head. So I actually stayed within 20 feet of the side of Interstate 10 down in the ditch.
Oh, wow.
I squirreled myself up and underneath some trees in some of the national forest right off the side of the road. Believe me, I can hide right in front of you and you would never see me. And most people are pretty oblivious to what's around them. I mean, yes, if they're kind of focused on their own stuff, and if you're kind of blending in, because the Clark that I have is a green one, although out in the West it's a bit brown out there. I pretty much kind of blended into the woodwork.
Gotcha.
Except for my cart, and sometimes, I was actually more worried about people seeing my cart than I was seeing me. So, but I attached to whatever I needed to attach to get whatever I needed to do to sleep that night. And, I mean, literally sometimes they were buzzing by, the wind was hitting me as it was going by, but nobody ever saw me. So.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So how long did it take you to finish?
Started March 1st and I finished on October the 8th, I believe. Okay. It took me longer than I thought. I had some issues April into May, somewhere around in there. I got really sick out in New Mexico and ended up with a severe bronchial infection, and my eardrum burst. Oh, wow. And so by the grace of one of my friends that, ironically, I tell this story all the time. You never know how your life is going to be in the future based on who you've met in the past until you get to that future point. And this friend of mine I had just made at that race that I got pulled from the previous year. And what they did was when they pulled me, I asked them if I could stay out in the camp with everybody. And they said, yeah, if you want to help or volunteer, that's fine. So they assigned me to this lady, and she was the finish line time taker, I guess you'd call her. And she had done it for several years, so she really didn't need any help. But I basically sat there and did whatever she asked me to do. And even at that, I was only around her maybe, 3 or 4 hours that whole week. But when I got home, she kept in touch with me on Facebook. And so when I was coming through New Mexico, she contacted me and said, hey, she was up in Los Alamos, and I was down below Albuquerque because I went kind of the middle. Albuquerque and Los Alamos is kind of in the north. I kind of went through the middle. And she said, hey, I'm coming to Albuquerque. If you want to meet for lunch, that's fine. Do you want to meet? And I said, well, yeah, I'll meet with you. So she did. And that was on a Sunday. And everything was fine then. And then I left out the next day. And I had to go up this dusty road to get to a bed and breakfast I was going to stay at that night. And the wind out in, I don't know if your listeners may know this, the wind out there is just ferocious, and especially in the spring. And I was walking up this dirt road where there's cattle, and it was all I could do to see, much less breathe. And by the time I got to the place I was staying, I felt fine. But the next morning, I woke up and there was something wasn't right. You could tell. I mean, it was that quick. The only thing I can think of is when all the dust was blowing up. There's also, cow patties and everything else blowing around in there. And I must have breathed in some. And so it set up an infection in my lungs that I didn't know at the time. I just thought I'd gotten a cold because there was a motel in the previous town that the clerk was coughing all over everybody while I was in there, and I'm like, oh no, please go away, go away, go away. And I was thinking maybe she's the one that did that, but I blamed her for a week. But it ended up out of the goodness of strangers, I left out that morning. I was not feeling well at all, and that was on a Tuesday. And I was stopping, there's a place in, now the name has escaped me. It's the Blanchard Rock Shop I'll think of it in a minute, in a town that only has 2 residents. Oh, wow. And I'll think of it in a minute. But I had contacted her the day before because there was a big long stretch in between there and Carrizozo, New Mexico. And if I could find a place to stay inside, I would try. And I contacted her before. She said, yeah, we have a guest house. You can come stay. No problem. So I did. And when I got there, I just kept getting sicker and sicker. So this was on a Tuesday. I ended up staying there until Friday morning because it just kept getting worse. And we kept trying to feed me full of cold medicine because I thought I had a cold.
Right.
I got up Friday morning and I needed to get going because if I didn't, I was going to get caught in some weather. And I just had to go even though I didn't feel like it. And as soon as I got 3 miles down the road, I knew that it was bad. So I kept going until about 18 miles. And a lady pulled up. And I got people pulling up all the time saying, hey, do you need a ride? And, of course, I always turned them down and everything. This lady, she was in a van and with her son. And a lot of times with the people, they're good-hearted. They mean well. But I've got me and my cart. And, you just can't fit that into anything. This lady had a handicap van that had a ramp in the back. And she pulled up and she said, I came through here on Tuesday and I saw you walking into whatever town that was. And said, now I'm heading. She had been to Albuquerque for cancer treatment for her son. That's what it was. Okay. And she said, I'm headed back home to Roswell and I passed you up. But, the good Lord just told me to turn around and come ask you if you were okay.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, duh. What? She said, yeah. She said, are you sure you don't need a ride? And I said, well, and I was still, how far was I? I was still about 19 miles from where I needed to be.
Okay.
And I had planned actually on stopping about 5 miles farther than about 6 miles and pitching the hammock and staying the night. But it was going to be 32 degrees that night, and the wind was blowing about 40 miles an hour. God. So I wasn't really looking forward to that. And I hum-hawed around about it and told her no about 3 or 4 times, and she just kept being insistent. And she said, you know what? You just don't look good. Let me take you into town. So let's see what we can get done for you. I can't promise you anything, but I know there's motels there. We can at least get you inside for the night. And by that time, my ears were really starting to hurt too. So I relented, and she hauled me in to Carrizozo. And then when we got there, it was about 3:30 on a Friday. And they didn't have any doctors in town, but they had a clinic, and it was supposed to close at 5. And they said, oh, great, I'll get down there. Well, get down there, and they had left early for the weekend. So there was nothing I could do but sit in Carrizozo.
Right.
And me still thinking all I had was a cold. And there was a Family Dollar or something like that there. And so Friday, I got me a hotel room, and I just, miserable. By Saturday night, my right eardrum had burst from the inside out.
Oh, crap.
There was pressure in my head, but I didn't realize it was that bad. And I woke up, and my pillow had pink liquid on it, and I was deaf as a post in that side. So Lisa, my friend in Roswell or Los Alamos, had been kind of keeping up with me and stuff and whatever. She said, well, go on to the doctor and then let's see what the deal is. And so I went down there, and they said, oh yeah, your left ear is infected and your right ear is, oh my gosh, infected. And you've got a pretty bad lung infection. So they gave me some shots, and they gave me a prescription, but the closest place to get it filled was 50-something miles away, and no way to get there.
Okay.
And so Lisa contacted me again, and she said, look, just wait. I can come down and get you on Monday. Just kind of hang out there, and you can come to my house. We'll get your prescription filled. You can stay here as long as you want to heal up, and then we'll get you back down there. And it was a 4 or 5 hour drive for her to get down there. So that's what happened. And I went and stayed in Los Alamos. I thought it was going to be 10 days and back. It ended up, I was there a month.
Oh, wow.
Because my eardrum wouldn't grow back. And the person that I saw there, who was a friend of Lisa's, didn't want to let me go back out on the road until my eardrum had completely grown back.
Okay.
So that's how that happened, and that put me a month behind.
Okay.
And then after that happened, I still needed to keep my right ear kind of protected, and the wind was still bad, and it was still kind of cool out there because most of New Mexico was above 5,000 feet. Okay. So I was trying my best to find places at least sheltered or somehow or other inside so I could, stay out. And they sent me off with an inhaler. I was coughing all the time. And so I did that until I got to Floydada, I think is the way you pronounce it, Texas. And then it wasn't going to be sustainable. So I called my husband, and anybody that knows him knows he would be the world's worst crew ever in the world because he doesn't have the attention span to be able to take care of anybody other than himself. And even that's debatable sometimes. But it's funny to people who know me. If they see this, they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But because I didn't want anybody to crew me, I just needed to make sure I got somewhere that I was in out of the weather.
Gotcha.
So I needed what we call a Sherpa.
Yep.
And that's what I asked him to do, and that's what he did So I basically went halfway completely by myself. The rest of the way I went with a Sherpa, but I walked. I had everything. I didn't put anything in the car. I had everything that I had. It's just that if I got stuck out between where I couldn't get enough miles in to get someplace to get in out of the weather,
Right.
he would come get me and then take me back to that spot.
Gotcha.
Kind of a thing. And he did that all the way until the end.
Okay. Did you have a favorite section or a favorite spot of your trip?
Well, my favorite would have to be Tennessee.
Okay.
Because that's where I'm from.
Right.
I mean, it's something really, a couple of things is really special about that is I walked completely from one tip to the other, from Memphis all the way to the northeast tip up in Bristol.
Okay.
I got to walk right to my house. I mean, how many people walk from California and step up on their doorstep? You know,
right.
I got to walk.
How many people walk from California to begin with across country?
It's a small number. You'd be surprised. But
had you done any other like long hikes or anything like that prior to this walk?
I had never done anything but just a little bit of backpacking, and of course I'd done some multi-day races.
Okay.
There's one that I'm very fond of, is called the Vol State. It's actually the official name of it is the last annual Vol State road race, and it's always the last annual. It's a play on words, and anyway, they just thought it was funny. And it runs, you actually ride a ferry from northeast Kentucky over across the Mississippi River, step off the ferry, and you're in Missouri. You step off the ferry, you walk about 100 feet up to a telephone pole. The race director lights his cigarette to start the race. Then you walk back onto the ferry, you go what we called your fastest mile that you will go the whole race, back across to Kentucky, and then you're in Tennessee for the most part of it. It's 314 miles, but
Okay.
you do 5 states. It's that 100 feet of Missouri. You're about, I don't know, 5 or 10 miles maybe in Kentucky, and then probably about 300 in Tennessee, and then you're a mile or so in Alabama, and you finish on a cliff overlooking the Nickajack Lake, and you're in Georgia.
Okay.
So it's quite the adventure. It's been going on for about 30 years. And that's actually when I first started sort of inquiring about doing a cross-country trip. I don't know how in the world, I don't remember how I got hooked up with the people that have done this, but whoever it was said, hey, you need to do the Vol State because that's kind of a mini Transcon, and you could do that and see if it suits you. And because the only difference was in the Vol State, you've got a 10-day limit. So you've got to do a 50K a day, which is about 32 miles in order to meet the cutoff, which is pretty, I mean, think about that. You got to walk a minimum of 32 miles every day for 10 days just to make the cutoff. So that's pretty hefty.
Yes.
So I tried that, and 5 miles into it, I was walking with one of the ladies who's still one of my good friends today. 5 miles into it, I was so miserable. I told the lady that was with me, I said, if I ever come up with anything like this again, I said, hit me on the head with a hammer, because this is the dumbest thing I've ever come up with. It's so stupid. I mean, this is just, I'm out of my element. I hurt all over. Everything was terrible. You know, what. But I ended up finishing. I wailed and moaned for days, but I ended up finishing in 9 days, 10 hours, 11 minutes, 42 seconds. I'll never forget those numbers. And but I was, for the first 3 days, I was absolutely miserable. I had blisters. My hips hurt. One of the things, especially like even the cross country thing, you're walking on roads, there's a camber to the road, even if it's ever so slightly.
Right.
And it makes one of your legs longer than the other. and it could be 1/8 of an inch, it could be a quarter. In Arkansas, I swear they had ski slopes for road shoulders. And if you walk on it for a while, it will make your hips absolutely ache like you have never had them before. And also your downward ankle will start to swell. And so it was torture. It just was. And I had blisters. I was able to get them to fix them, but they were not comfortable. I was just totally not a happy camper. But it's one of those things when you finish, you're like, man, that was kind of cool. You forget all the real awful stuff. Right. But then since then, I have volunteered at that race every year except 2016.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I go out and I'm the meat wagon lady that they call me. And I go out and scrape up the dead meat off of the ground when they quit. And I'm a combination of their mama and their daddy and their priest and their psychologist and everybody that you can think, because any time you do these long distance things, whether they're transcons or things like Vol State or stuff like that, it's 95% mental. The physical aspect, unless you're one of the elites who's way up front in the pointy end, which most people aren't, those are very small percentage. Right. And even for them, it's 95% mental. Physical ability in my opinion, has very little to do with it. As long as you can keep putting one foot in front of the other. I mean,
your body will adjust physically.
Definitely, it will adjust. I learned there's one of the things I do is I coach ultra distance athletes. And the cross-country trek really showed me a lot of stuff that goes against conventional wisdom in that arena. It was like, oh, the light bulb came on, and I use that now in my coaching because there's a lot of, training and stuff you go through for that, but some of it I just have to say is just wrong. Once you get out there and you're in these multi-day things and ultra endurance stuff, it's just not what they teach you that it is. For some reason they don't understand the reality of what they're asking, and so that actually helped me. Because when you're out there, you've got all this time to analyze every leaf and twig and bug, Yep. And I tend to be an over-analyzer anyway. So you're walking along out there, you've got all this time, you're trying to solve the problems of the universe, and you get lost in your thoughts and stuff like that. And you just start thinking about this stuff, and then you figure it out. Well, oh, this is the way it should be. So that actually really, really helped out a lot.
Awesome.
But my friends, I still have friends that are in the long distance. I'm one of the main administrators on the USA Crossers Facebook page. Okay. But a lot of them are a lot more accomplished than me. Some of them have crossed multiple times. I can't imagine that. I'm glad I did it. I don't know that I'd want to do it again. And also, I started when I was 57 years old. I didn't turn 58 until that April, a month later. So being a female and being that age and going by myself was kind of an outlier, because most of the girls that do it, and I say girls because they're young enough to be my children. Sometimes some of them young enough to be my grandchildren. And so now there's some few middle-aged, but they usually have crews. The men are all over the place. There's some older, some younger, some in the middle. But the women tend to be a little bit younger, especially the ones that go without a crew. Because most women go with a crew, if you can find them. But crews are expensive. Sure. You have to provide everything for them. To get a crew to do even with a Vol State for 10 days, you've got to have somebody that's a saint and doesn't get rattled and will take a whole lot of crap off of you, because they have to have be even keel, and recognize what's what, and if you're just whining or if there's really something wrong, that kind of thing. And
Right.
Now multiply that by 10, because I went 3,154 miles. So that's about 10 ball states. So multiply that by 10, and somebody's out there the whole time. They have to completely focus on the runner and leave everything else, whatever's with them, behind. And that runner has to totally depend on that crew person. And that's somebody really hard to find. And so you usually cost you a little bit of money to have a great crew.
Gotcha. All right. Well, before we close out, I saw also where your story of your cross country walk is in a book also.
Yes.
Across America on Foot.
Yes, and that's a collaborative effort by some of us on the USA Crossers page.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly who it was that kind of put the bug in the air to do that, but anybody on the page was invited to write a short story about their crossing. Some of them ended up being longer than others, and some of them shorter, but there's 27 stories in the book. It's called Across America on Foot, and it is available on Amazon. And some of the people in there are like the who's who of the ultra distance community. We've got, I don't want to name the names because I don't want to get somebody wrong, but we've also got one in particular was a father-son who did it. And the son, when he started out, he was 10 years old.
Oh, wow.
And they walked from Noah Barnes and his dad, and they walked from Key West to Florida to Blaine, Washington. So they did a diagonal, which was, I don't remember how many miles it is, but it's a lot more than what I did. And Noah started when he was 10, and they finished when he was 11. And he did it, he has type 1 diabetes. And so he did it to raise awareness for type 1 diabetes. So that's a pretty cool, they've got a cool story in there. Gary Cantrell is in there. He's the infamous Lazarus Lake of the Barkley Marathons fame. He's also the race director for the Vol State and a couple of other pretty famous races around. He did his in 2018, I think. He generally followed US 20 from somewhere in Rhode Island to Portland, Oregon, or somewhere in Oregon. So I think that's what he did. His story is in there. Some of the people are not U.S. citizens. You'd be amazed at how many non-U.S. citizens come over here and try to cross the country. But yeah, 27 totally different stories, because we all have different personalities and got different experiences about it. And so it's a great book. I mean, you can pick and choose your stories and just read one here and there, but they're all short stories about everybody's adventure.
All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll put the Amazon link to that book in the show notes as well. I'll put that link. I'll put the link that you gave me for the Facebook group, Rise Up for the Fallen. And then there's another link. The
USA Crossers, maybe.
No, the 9/11 Trail org.
Yeah. I believe it's 911trail.org.
Yeah.
I believe that's what it is.
Yep. So I'll put those in the show notes. That way anybody that wants to read up on all that and check out your book and everything else, or check out the book that you're in, can do that. And if there's any other links or anything like that you want to add, just get them to me, and I can add them in the show notes as well.
Sure.
So, all right, Jan. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and telling us, about how you use the Clark and about the whole trip in general. I was very interested in talking with you whenever you sent the email, because that just fascinated me. That you done that. So
I tell you that Clark was just a wonderful piece of kit. It's just a wonderful piece of kit. It just fit the adventure, the quality and craftsmanship of the hammock was superb. I mean, to this day, I've not had anything happen to it, and I have beat it up, all ways to Sunday, and that thing just it's like a Timex. It's take a lick and it's keep on ticking. It's well made, and I would highly recommend. Like I said, I'm sure Dutch took their parameters and he makes them as good as they made them, because he makes quality stuff. But it's just wonderful kind of kit.
I do know that when Dutch was talking to Gary, about buying the Clark name and everything else, the company, Gary was looking for somebody that would continue to, have the same quality and ethics that he had. So,
and when I talked to them, I actually talked to them about it, and they gave me a bit of a discount, because those things aren't cheap.
Yeah.
And he didn't give me one free, but he gave me a bit of a discount. And you could tell that he was very meticulous and took great pride in what he did. And that's what you want to look for. I mean, like I said, they weren't cheap, but they were super dependable and bomb-proof. Yes. And I would put them up against anything.
You get what you pay for. Yeah, with them.
And my superior is the same way. I really like that. The only thing I have to be careful about is, because it's down on the bottom, I have to not get it wet. But he does sell like a cover to go underneath it if you want to do that.
Right.
But his gear has been wonderful. And I'm not any trouble out of it. And I would buy from him again too. There's plenty of cottage vendors out there.
A lot of cottage vendors.
They do great job at Loco Libre, whoever the others. But the ones I've had interactions with, great pieces, and they obviously take great pride in their work.
Yes, definite. So, all right, Jan. Well, if you ever do anything else again, like this.
Anything crazy?
Yeah. Just give me a holler, and we'll definitely have you back on the show.
Well, the only crazy thing I'm thinking about right now, they've got I've actually done one version of it before. It's Cross Florida Individual Time Trial, and they've got several versions now, and that's a thing where you get a route. One of the fellows down in Florida who's very well known in making routes down there. Go across Florida, you go on your own. It's individual time trial. That's what that means. And so I did one version, and he's got another version now that has a little more gravel and less road. And with my biking these days, I try to stay off the roads as much as possible. And I'm planning to do that maybe this spring or early spring. Okay. That's an adventure. His stuff is always an adventure, and it's never easy, but it's always adventure, and you get to see a lot of Florida that you never would see, and so that's the only thing I'm looking forward to right now. Hopefully I can work that out with my schedule to be able to do that, and I definitely will have a hammock with me.
Well, definitely get back with me then, and we'll chat about that adventure as well.
All right.
Once you finish that.
Good. Well, great to talk to you, and great to talk to everybody out there, and hope you learned something. And
all right. Well, I appreciate it, Jan. We'll talk to you later.
Good to be with you.
Thanks, Jan, for coming on and talking about such an amazing journey that you had, and how the Clark Mark II hammock was the perfect hammock for the job. You'll have to keep me posted about when you come down here to Florida to do the Cross Florida Individual Time Trials. As always, you can find out more about Jan, the 9/11 National Memorial Trail, and the Rise Up for the Falling from the links in the show notes. Don't forget to check out all the other podcast shows that are on the Hiking Radio Network. There is Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the Jester Section Hiker Podcast, the Trail Dames Podcast, and Hiking Unfiltered, and each one of them is a great listen. And if you like what we're doing with each one of the shows and you would like to support us, please consider leaving a one-off or monthly donation. The donation button can be found on each of the show's pages. All donations are greatly appreciated and help to keep the shows going. So until next week, happy hanging, everyone.